this is Michel Sorbet, and this is a new episode of Wojennik TV. Some time ago, I presented you the review of Escape the Dark Castle, the first game published in the series Escape the Dark by Themeborne Limited. Today I have the pleasure to present you the second installment in this franchise, Escape the Dark Sector. The game was published by the same publisher, by Themeborne Limited, in 2020, and it was preceded by a very successful Kickstarter campaign. The initial goal was to gather somewhere around $20,000, and at the end the campaign closed with more than $200,000 gathered. More than 2,900 backers decided that this project was sufficiently interesting in order to back it. This shows how the first installment, Escape the Dark Castle, was popular and how this series gained the appraisal of many people. The authors of this game are Alex Crispin, Thomas Pike and James Shelton. It's a title for 1 to 4 players, aged 12 or higher, and the time of play will be somewhere around 30 and 60 minutes. The game is set this time not in a castle, not in a medieval realm, but in space. We will be crew members of a spaceship imprisoned in a dark facility. Our objective will be to escape this facility, reach our spaceship and escape from this space station, escape the dark sector. We'll be playing cooperatively, which means that everyone wins or everyone loses. During this review, I'd like to show you how the game looks, what are the components that we will be using, then briefly explain how the game works, and at the end, as usually, I'd like to give you my final thoughts. I'd like to underline the strong, but also add a little bit weaker points of this title. So let's begin. Here is Escape the Dark Sector from Themeborne Limited. I'd like to show you at first the elements of this game, then briefly explain how the game works. Now, I also would like to underline that this, what you are seeing right now, is a copy of the game alongside with the playing mat, which is added to the game, which is another item which is outside the box of Escape the Dark Sector. But as you can see, it's an extremely useful item because it allows you to store everything. It adds a lot of theme. It makes the game a lot pleasant to look at and a lot more easy to play. I strongly recommend you buy also the playing mat. It's not only gorgeous, it's also extremely functional. So big thumbs up for Themeborne Limited for making this playing mat. It is an extremely good idea to create it and to add this to Escape the Dark Sector. Now, in Escape the Dark Sector, each player will take control of one character, of one crew member. Each will receive one such card. We have several ones. Now, this is a character card which mainly is just for theme, but it has one important part. It is the bottom part of the card where you can see what are your 3 stats. Those are might, cunning, and the third one is wisdom. Now, as you can see, the levels of those stats are different between different crew members, and they reflect how well a character can perform when making tests requiring one of those 3 stats. So, as you can see, each crew member also has their own name. For instance, we get Lieutenant Tanner, we got Lieutenant Cook. In Escape the Dark Castle, we had those professions. We had the Tanner, we had the Miller, we had the Cook. Now, those are the same characters, but now they are lieutenants of a galactic empire, international or maybe even interstellar force. Each crew member will receive their own die. As you can see, each die is associated to a specific crew member. Now, those dice are 6-sided dice, but they are different one from another, and the results on each side reflect the stats that the crew members have. So for instance, if we have Lieutenant Tanner with a low might stat, we might expect that might will be found only on one side of this die. The cunning will be presented on two sides, firstly with a single digit and secondly with the double digit and with the shield. Finally, the third one, wisdom, should be found on three three sides, as you can see, as a single result, as a double result with a shield, and as a single again. So we have three sides, and each crew member will have their own distinctive die. Each crew member receives also an implant. This is something different from Escape the Dark Castle, because in Escape the Dark Castle we had no implants, which is quite understandable, but we received no starting gear. Here you receive an implant, and we have several ones, different ones, which can be implants which will, for instance, be activated during combat. So each player will receive one such a card. Each character will receive additional equipment, additional items during the adventure, and those will be drawn from the item stack or received at the game start from a specific reserve, which has some starting equipment, slug pistols, ray guns. Those are weapons used during shootouts, during ranged combat, which I will explain in a few moments. Now I am talking about items and equipment because each crew member can have up to 4 pieces of equipment, but it is also important to see what type of equipment it is, because we have two sorts of equipment. We have equipment cards which are vertical and horizontal. If we have vertical cards, they take only one space in our inventory. The horizontal cards take more space, they take 2 slots in our inventory. So if we can have up to 4 items, we can have, for instance, 4 vertical card items, or for instance 2 horizontal ones, or we can have a combination of 1 horizontal and 2 vertical. It's up to us. When preparing the game, we will also prepare all the other cards which will be used during the game. We will prepare the 2 mission outcome cards, which are read at the end of our adventure. We will prepare all the dice, and we have different kinds of dice. We have chapter dice, which will be used in order to track the strength and the current endurance of our opponents. We will have hit dice used by our opponents during ranged combat. We will have ammo dice, which will be of 3 different kinds: standard ammunition, electric or electricity ammunition, energy ammunition, and explosives, because depending on the items that we have, depending on the weapons that we transport, we will be using different ammunition. We prepare also 2 special cards, the medical drone card and the flank card, which are something new comparing to Escape the Dark Castle. Those will be used during combat. I will explain them a little bit later. Finally, we have to prepare our adventure cards. To do it, we randomly choose one final card, which represents a final boss or a final difficulty that we have to surpass in order to win the game. On those cards, we will place 4 third level cards, 4 second level cards, and 4 first level cards. On the top, we will place a starting card. We have also a selection of a few different types of cards. Now, those sectors, those level cards, represent different sectors of the stations through which we will be traveling, because during the game we will be trying to escape the dark sector, escape the dark station. We have managed to evade from our cell, and firstly we will travel through the cell's surroundings. we will see what lies in the vicinity of our cell. Then we'll travel through the central part of the station, and at the end we will be traveling through the part near our spacecraft, trying to reach the docks and mount on our spaceship and leave this station. Now, those are all the elements that we will be using. There is also one additional, this will be a small booklet, as you can see, and pencils, because we will be tracking our endurance, our health points. Now, each crew member will receive such a sheet used in order to track their health. Will get also one pencil, and when losing health points or maybe acquiring new health points, we will be tracking our current level. We start with 12 life points. If we ever drop to 0, we immediately lose the game. In Escape the Dark Sector, we have to win as a team. So if one of our crew members is killed, so his life points drop to 0, we all lose as a team instantly. To win, we have to pass through the entire deck of cards. We have to reach the final boss and defeat him in combat, which will enable us to escape the Dark Sector. Now, how a turn of Escape the Dark Sector looks. The first thing at the start of the game will be to uncover one of those starting cards, which will tell us what circumstances under which circumstances we start the game. And we have on each card a graphic. We have also a description in italics, which will be for fluff, which will be for theme, which has no impact on the game, but I strongly recommend you read it because it adds a lot of depth. Escape the Dark Sector is all about theme, is all about living an adventure. So reading those passages really increases the immersion. It makes the game much more interesting than if we read only the mechanical part of the cards. We have information concerning some initial setup modifications. So for instance, if we happen to begin our adventure with this card, we will remove one Act 3 chapter card from the mission deck. We will have one less card in the deck, and at the same time we will also draw one weapon card for each crew member. So this is a way also to obtain some starting equipment. Now, when acquiring such weapons, we instantly receive also a certain amount of ammo, which we will be using during ranged combat. I will show you it in a few moments. So each crew member can receive such cards and instantly add the corresponding ammo die to the weapon card. Then, when this is done, before uncovering another chapter card, we always have to make a decision which crew member will be leading the group. This is important because sometimes the cards drawn from the deck will indicate that only the leading character has to pass some tests, has some damage inflicted, or has to incur the consequences of an encounter. So, for instance, drawing the first card here will put an escaping man on our route, and as you can see, we have the information that you lose one health point. You means the character which was decided by the group that is the leading one. So this is a moment when such a consequence can be applied to this leading character. Now, as you can see, those cards have a fantastic artwork. They have also some information on how to apply the results of such a card. So here, for instance, the leading character will lose one health point, because a shot meant for the escaping man struck the leading character. Then as a group we have one option, and here we have to decide. We have the option to let the running man through, and we can draw an item card. This will end the chapter immediately. We will be able to discard the card. But we can also decide to attack the man. Why should we do it? Well, because if we do defeat him, we will receive 2 items and not only 1. Now, in order to show you how combat works in Escape the Dark Sector, I will choose the second option. So I will try to attack this opponent. So what happens when we decide, or when we are forced to fight? At first, we will place a certain number of chapter dice indicating the power of such an opponent, and at the same time the endurance of such an opponent on the playing mat. We will place 2 might dice, 1 cunning dice, and for each symbol with this pawn or with a character, we will grab a number of chapter dice corresponding to the number of players, and we will randomly determine the type of symbol that will be placed on the playing mat. So here we have an opponent with 4 might dice and 1 cunning dice. Now, how can we defeat him? If the card doesn't say otherwise, we have the option to at first decide to shoot at this opponent, so to choose ranged fire if we have loaded ranged weapons. So if we do decide to participate in ranged combat, each character can choose one of those actions, but at least one of them has to choose the shoot action. The other ones are flanking, reloading, activating the drone, trading, or taking cover. Taking cover is just doing nothing. We wait for the outcome of the round. Trading means that we can exchange items, we can give items, we can take items, and we can instantly use them. Activating the drone. As I said earlier, we have a special card. Activating the drone means placing our crew die on this card, and this enables us to activate the medical drone, which will increase our health points by 1. But this card is used only once during each combat. So after use, the drone has to be recharged. It is recharged up after the combat. So it is a way to recover 1 health point, but we can activate it only once during a combat. Then we have the option of reloading, because as I said, ranged weapons use ammo. When we shoot with such a weapon, we discard the dice. In order to obtain new dice, we have to reload those weapons. Flanking is another interesting action which was absent in Escape the Dark Castle. It is an action which can be taken by one of the crew members who tries to outflank our enemy. We place our crew die on the flanking tactical combat action card, and we roll a hit die. If we obtain a hit, we lose 1 health point. It is also possible to avoid such a hit. But the benefit of flanking an opponent is that after resolving the current combat round, we can play a flank combat round, which enables us to attack such an opponent without receiving any hits from this opponent. So we can attack him without getting shot at or without receiving hits in close combat. If we decide finally for the shooting action, it's extremely simple. We take our ammo dice from our weapon that we are using. We take also a hit die and we roll those dice. Now the hit of course means that the opponent will inflict us damage corresponding to the damage done in ranged combat by such an opponent, whereas the ammo dice will indicate how much chapter dice we can remove from such an opponent. And here, for instance, this opponent, if we obtain the ammo result, will lose 2 chapter dice. If we use energy attacks, this will enable us to remove 1 chapter dice. Whereas if we use explosive ammunition, we can remove up to 3 chapter dice. The advantage of ranged combat is that we can choose the chapter dice removed. So for instance, if we obtain 3 hits, we can decide to remove 3 dice of our choosing. After a combat round is resolved, if we still have ammo, we can continue to choose ranged combat. But if we do not have any ammo left, or if we do not want to continue ranged combat, we can decide to pass to close combat. Now, close combat is pretty similar, with the exception that the opponent will not be rolling hit dice. We will be rolling only our crew dice. In close combat, we have the similar actions. We have the fight action, the reload action, the activate drone, trade and take cover action. Now, if we decide to fight, we will roll our crew dice, and here, in order to remove those chapter dice, we have to obtain the results corresponding to the dice that we want to remove. So for instance, if we want to remove the might dice, we have to obtain might on our crew dice, on our crew die. The double results mean that we can remove 2 chapter dice, and additionally the shield protects us from damage done by our opponent, because in contrast to ranged fire, in close combat fire, if we do not kill the opponent, so if we do not remove all the chapter dice, the opponent hits us and inflicts us damage equal to his close combat damage. But if we manage to remove all the chapter dice, we not only defeat the enemy, we can also obtain new items in a number indicated on the eliminated enemy. So we draw a corresponding number of new items, and we can distribute them between our crew members. After resolving a chapter card, which not always includes combat, sometimes it will be events which will require us to make some difficult decisions or to pass tests requiring us to use some of our skills. We again will have to decide who will be the leading character, who will draw the card, and maybe will also will incur the consequences of some events. But before doing it, we can reload our weapons. So we can grab some new ammo and we can reload once our weapons. Then we take a new card and we play in the same way until we reach the final card or one of the crew members dies, which means that all our team loses. And this is pretty much it when it comes to the rules governing the play of Escape the Dark Sector. Now, I'd like to invite you to my final thoughts. I'd like to present you what I think about this game. I'd like to tell you what I think after playing it several times. I'd like to also to underline what are, in my opinion, the strong points of this game and what are the a little bit weaker ones. Escape the Dark Sector is the second installment in the Escape the Dark franchise. While reviewing Escape the Dark Castle, I really liked the quality of the elements, the idea of the whole storytelling inside the game, but I had mixed opinions concerning the setting, because I thought that this was such a simple game, a game with such a huge potential, that this setting, this quite brutal setting with some terrifying pictures, with some terrifying descriptions, was not very suitable for playing with children. So when reviewing Escape the Dark Sector, I was interested if this game is different in this aspect from its predecessor, and I must say that this is a huge step forward. Escape the Dark Sector has, in my opinion, a better setting. The quality of the components is even higher than in the first part. The mechanics of this game are better, and the potential of the storytelling element is even greater. So let's now talk a little bit about all those elements. When it comes to the quality of the components, we receive more things than in Escape the Dark Castle. We receive more dice, we receive more cards. This is something which is a step forward and which further enhances the playing experience when trying games in this system. What I like is that those cards are still very pretty, very functional. We have absolutely no doubt how to read them. We still have the descriptions which are pretty much used to enhance our playing experience, but those descriptions are not that brutal, are not so detailed than they were in Escape the Dark Castle. Additionally, the pictures are, in my opinion, more suitable for younger players, and this is the reason why I would have absolutely no problems in playing Escape the Dark Sector with younger players, but I would have a question mark when thinking about playing Escape the Dark Castle with children, for instance, aged 8 or 10 or 9. Here I wouldn't have any doubt. I'd play this game with pleasure. I like the rulebook. It's still a very simple rulebook which explains how to tackle the game, which explains how the different mechanisms work. Now, this is a game more complicated than Escape the Dark Castle, but it is still a very easy to learn, very easy to teach title. And I must say that this is a good direction because the game is not overly complicated. It's more complicated than Escape the Dark Castle, but it is still the same type. It is still as easy and as easy to teach and as easy to learn as its predecessor. And this is a very strong point of this series. I like that Themeborne Limited maintained this trend. When it comes to those mechanics, I like the fact that we receive new things in this game. We receive the Medibot, we receive the flanking option, we receive ranged combat, because in Escape the Dark Castle we had only close combat. Here we have ranged combat, and this is an excellent decision. This is an excellent step forward. Those additional decisions that we have to make during the game will further increase our feeling. We will have to cooperate more closely, take more decisions. We will have to also concentrate on resource management, because what items we have, how many ammo we have, will be of a big importance. We will have to decide when to use them, when to reload, who should shoot, who should wait, who should take cover. Those are all the actions possible during a battle, and each time we will have to carefully decide how to tackle each opponent. I still like the fact that the time of play is very short. It's a game which you will prepare, which you will explain and play in under an hour. This is extremely good. Additionally, this is a game which gives you such a huge storytelling potential. I love it. I loved it already in the Escape the Dark Castle, but here it's even better. I prefer the space setting from the medieval fantasy setting from Escape the Dark Castle, and additionally I believe that this storytelling potential has been even more increased, even more increased by the division of the sector cards into 3 types. The first ones will be quite easy, and they are concentrating, the stories are concentrating on what we find near the place where we were closed in. So after escaping, we can explore different cells. We can see what is around the place where we were locked. Then we will be traveling through the central parts of the space station, and at the end, when traveling through the 3rd sector cards, we will be facing opponents, or we will be visiting places which are located near the docking station where our spaceship is closed. So this is an additional element. It is logical, it is well written, the story really evolves each time differently. And this is another major strong point of this game. Each game will be different. You might say, and you might think, well, you receive only a certain amount of cards. After a certain time, you'll get to know them. Yes, this is true. But firstly, each time you will arrange your deck differently, so each time the story will have a different storyline. Secondly, even if you have the same cards, many of them have different options of how to try to cope with the danger. You can decide to battle your opponent, you can decide to run and take some hits, you can decide to take tests, to make tests of some of your stats. So there are different approaches, and this means that on different levels this game has a huge potential to have a great replay value. What I really like is also the fact that you have those additional mechanics. I like ranged combat, I like the medibot, I like flanking. Those are nice small additions which give you more decisions to make, which enhance your playing experience. So what I think are the weaker points of Escape the Dark Sector? I'd say that the same one which concerned Escape the Dark Castle will be the randomness. You'll be drawing cards randomly, you'll be drawing items randomly, you'll be rolling a lot of dice, and of course you have some mechanics in the game which enable you to mitigate those random results. You can change the results of some dice, you can make rerolls, but at the end it's still dice rolling, it's still card drawing, and you'll have sometimes the feeling that randomness was the major factor which decided of your fate. Of course, this is a game so short, a game so accessible that it won't be a big issue, because even losing somewhere near the boss or during the final fight with the boss, you'll not have the feeling that the game was long, that you failed terribly during gameplay. Luck is a part of this game, but it is a game so accessible and so quick to play that it will not frustrate you very much. The second thing, which is really a small detail, but which I think is a small hiccup, is the medibot. I said that I like this mechanic because I think it's a huge step forward compared to what we had in Escape the Dark Castle. In Escape the Dark Castle, during close combat, one of the participants could decide to rest and to regain one health point while his colleagues fought their opponent. Here it's not the case. You can only once per combat activate the medibot in order to obtain one health point, regain one health point. So you can use it only once during combat. I think it's logical, I think it's a step forward, because in Escape the Dark Castle there were bizarre situations when you were facing an opponent who inflicted only one wound, and you could, switching your roles, fight, rest, and not lose any health points while killing your enemy. Here such a strategy is unfeasible because you can only use the medibot once. And this is what I like. But what I do not like is the fact that the medibot recharges and it can be used only during combat. This means that if you fight one opponent and then you run into 3 cards which do not require you to enter combat, you cannot use the medibot. And this is illogical, because if you can reload your weapons between chapters, why couldn't you use the medibot, which surely recharged up until then? If the medibot recharges between combats, I see absolutely no reason why it shouldn't recharge, for instance, when you draw a card which is not a combat. The medibot should also be possible to be used after resolving this chapter card and before taking another. Well, it's maybe a question of balancing the game, I do not know, but I think it's a small hiccup when it comes to logic or the construction of some elements. This is not a big issue, this is a small detail, but I'm telling you about this because I thought it was something bizarre. Concluding, Escape the Dark Sector is an extremely good game. It's a huge step forward in the Escape the Dark franchise. I love the quality of the elements, still the black and white style used in this game. I love the playing mat, which is extremely useful, which is extremely
which is extremely pretty. It enables you to keep everything in order in the playing area. I strongly recommend you buy also the playing mat if you plan to buy Escape the Dark Sector on its own. I like the fact that each story will be different, that the game is still very accessible, it's easy to learn, it's easy to teach. At the same time, it has more depth, it has more storytelling potential than its predecessor. It's just the way how a franchise should be developed. I'm very pleased with how this franchise is developing, and I will be eagerly waiting for another game in the Escape the Dark series. This was the review of Escape the Dark Sector from Themeborne Limited. I invite you to take a look at our other videos, take also a look at our Facebook and Instagram accounts. If you want to become a supporter of Wojennik TV, you can take a look at our Patronite account. I wish you a terrific day and see you next time.